Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Underdog episode. Today, we got Season 3, Episode 12, the last episode of Season 3, Terminal 18. This takes place Christmas Eve. Here we go. The wind is howling. An unreadable metal sign is banging against the arch it's hung on, making a loud sound. Balls of paper and other trash are blowing and rolling past a dilapidated wooden bench. Somebody is running, wearing brown pants and a matching blazer. A pale hand is grasping strongly on a briefcase made of leather. The person holds onto their brown checkered bowler hat. They run under the arch holding the sign. The camera lingers on the sign, showing what it says on it. Terminal 18. The man stops in front of the black train tracks and rolls his sleeve back, checking the watch on his wrist. He looks up and glances down the railroad for the train. Seeing nothing, he rolls his sleeve back up and begins to pace before hearing the whistle of the train making him snap his head to the tracks and stopping his pacing and standing still in front of them. Soon the train rolls up and slows up. It stops and the door flings open. The man approaches the stairs and goes up them, looking at the train conductor, handing him his ticket. The conductor takes it and views it over. "Mr. Ezekiel, how wonderful for you to ride with us today." He hands the ticket back to Mr. Ezekiel. He shoots the conductor a glance and walks past him to the aisle as the camera centers on the briefcase as he keeps walking. It cuts to black, and the title card plays. It cuts to Dylan sitting in the black room, still alone. He shakes his head and finally snaps out of it and looks around the room. Noticing it's pitch black, he holds his hand up and snaps a flame to his fingers, illuminating it. The room is tiny and mostly empty except a trash can in the corner. Dylan locates the only door in the room and goes up to it. He grips the doorknob and looks at the door before opening it, and there's no floor and all there is clouds. Dylan gets shocked and steps back from the edge. He taps into his comms. "Zara, where am I?" Dylan stands there a moment and no response returns. He taps off of it and walks towards the door, looking out to the plunge. He looks down and doesn't see ground anywhere nearby. He takes a deep breath before charging a jump and springing out the door, beginning his free fall down. As the wind is rushing against his face, he squints his eyes as his body is unmovable. Eventually the ground comes into his vision, but not even close to it. He falls into a body of water, sinking down. He starts to swim to the top, catching his breath when he exits the water. He looks around and notices he's in the middle of a public pool that's deserted. He furrows his eyebrows in confusion. He looks around for any sign of life, but can't find anything. Suddenly, he feels a force tugging at his foot, trying to pull him back down. Even though he tries to fight it, he gets pulled back underwater. The water muffling his screams as he frantically attempts to swim to the surface of the water. As Dylan and the force continue to play the game of tug-of-war, the force seems to be pulling away. As Dylan loses motivation and energy, he allows the force to pull him to the bottom. The screen slowly closes to black, imitating the closing of Dylan's eyes. But now the sounds of waves crashing against the beach fill his ears, as does the sound of meows from seagulls. He slowly opens his eyes and lifts his head, realizing where he is, and that he is laying down. He brushes the patch of sand off his cheek and pushes himself off the hot sand and back onto his feet. He gets up and the sun is blazing down onto him, and the sky is clear, the alone blue filling it. He looks around and doesn't see any sign of life, and again. He starts to step forward, but a strange sound comes from the ocean behind him. He turns around and a section of the water is parted, being forced back to create a narrow path. He decides to go down the path and walk down it. Each step he admires the vibrant blue water and the key creatures dwelling within. Eventually the path stops being created, and instead seashells begin to mold together, forming a door of them. He looks at the knob made of crab claws and grips it, trying not to pinch himself. He twists the claws and pulls the door open. On the other side is a bright orange orb filling the bottom of the door, and above it is the black void filled with distant white stars. Space, Dylan realizes. He gets as close to the door as he can and looks down at the orange star, looking at the swirling surface. He takes a deep breath before reaching his foot out through the door and cautiously places it down onto the star. He looks at his foot for a second before pulling his other foot through the door. As he does this, the door slams shut behind him, leaving the washing sounds of the sea behind. Dylan looks at his feet, astounded by it. He looks up and sees something further out on the star, a person with long, curly brown hair. He goes on his tiptoes to get a better view of the person, but can't see any better. He swallows and starts to jog before running towards the person. But no matter how far much he runs, the person stays the same distance away. He starts to scream out for them. Hello? The person doesn't turn around, and Dylan starts to slow down before coming to a complete stop. Dylan takes a deep exhale before turning around and seeing the landscape is different. It's a field of yellow flowers. Confused, he turns around and sees that the void behind him has also turned into this botanical-filled grassland. His breathing goes to a calm as he takes in the fresh air and the sounds of wind and birds chirping. He starts to slowly walk through the field, until he finds a small patch that's just grass and no flowers. He sits down in the middle of the patch. He runs his hand along the top of the nearby flowers, making them bend lightly before they wiggle back up. After taking a few deep breaths, he plucks a flower from out the ground and holds onto the stem, twirling the flower in his fingers. Entranced by the flower, he doesn't even notice the kaleidoscope of butterflies approaching him. One branches off in the group and lands softly on Dylan's nose, on his now exposed face, which he also didn't notice. In slight surprise, he drops the flower and lets the butterfly sit there. He looks around with the butterfly still on his nose, and he raises his eyes at the sight of a black substance rushing over the fields, consuming it. It cuts to Zara with her hands on her hips, Miranda and Jake standing plainly next to her, and Alan standing there to the side with his arms crossed over his chest. 3, 2, 1. At the end of Zara's countdown, a small purple portal appears above their flimsy couch, and Dylan falls out, plopping softly onto it. Shocked, he looks around them before glancing back, seeing the team. Zara, you were in your own thoughts. Everybody looks at Zara as she's about to explain. It was peaceful. Till the end. Good. You needed a break. Brandon and Jake walk off to do something else. Dylan stands up off the couch and walks around it to Zara. Are the bots still out there? About that. Zara and Dylan are standing on top of the warehouse looking ahead at the fleet of bots circling one of the tallest buildings in the city. What are they doing? Lotus must have coded them to do it. Code persists after his death. Question is what the hell he coded them to do. The two look at each other before it cuts to the robots circling the top of the building in a funnel shape down the building. Cops are surrounding the building on the ground looking up at the bots. Some cops are radioing things and others are talking to worried citizens. But everybody turns to the crackling of a megaphone off to the side. A cop is holding it in front of his mouth, waiting for everyone to give him their attention. Everyone, the problem will be resolved soon, so please return to your normal activities. As he's about to step down from the car he was standing on, a citizen shouts out, It doesn't seem like it's being resolved. The cop stops as he's on the hood of the car. I assure you that we are actively working on fixing this problem. Where's Underdog? The cop takes a deep breath. If Underdog wanted to do something, he would have already done it. The cop turns off the megaphone and fully steps off the car, walking onto the road. It cuts to the inside of the warehouse where everyone is gathered in a circle besides Alan, who's standing slightly away. So let me say this one last time. Dylan walks beside Miranda. Me and Miranda are going to the sewer base. We need to try and figure out where the code is being kept. Dylan gestures his hand to the other 3 team members. You 3 see if you can neutralize the bots another way. Jake and Zara nod their heads while Alan just stays still. Everyone separates and Dylan goes up to Miranda. You ready to leave in 5? Miranda nods her head. You okay? We're both not okay. Dylan looks away from Miranda. But we can't focus on feelings right now. Let's go. Miranda turns from Dylan and starts to walk towards the door, grabbing her pitchfork on the way. Dylan stands there for a moment thinking about what she said before following her out the door. Still inside, Jake and Zara are talking while Alan is watching from a distance.
What do you think is up with the bots?
Man, whatever it is, it kind of freaks me out.
And after we take care of them, we got Alan to deal with.
He's been helping us. Jake rolls his eyes and shifts his weight to the one side of his body.
I'm just saying, don't let him get too comfortable.
Zara scoffs and swiftly turns from him and looks at Alan, who's pretending he's not listening. She squints her eyes at him and walks off. It cuts to the yellow sky as the sun begins to set. The camera goes down until it goes under the underground sewer complex where Miranda and Dylan are close to approaching Lotus's base hallway. They both peer down it before starting to walk through it. They both walk through very slowly, trying not to think of past events. They reach the airtight door and it's wide open. They look at each other before entering the base and looking around. The floor still has remnants of crystalliza on the floor. They step around it and continue to look around the base. Miranda goes to the right and Dylan goes to the left. Scanning the wall, Miranda notices the shifted bookshelf and the opening in the wall. Miranda walks through the door, looking down the hallway of the robot containers. Hey. Dylan turns from the other side and looks at Miranda. Go in. I'll be in there in a sec. Miranda steps into the hallway fully, and Dylan goes back to the side he was inspecting. Inside the hallway, Miranda notices a small windowed room and pushes the door open. She walks in fully, pushing the door against the wall and looking around the room. She notices the open case of the red button and all the other buttons on the console. She looks out the front window before pressing a small gray button. Nothing happens. She begins pressing all the buttons of the console, none of them making anything happen. She sighs before heading for the door until a technological sound plays in the wall opposite of the console. She goes up to the wall and puts her ear to it, trying to listen. As she does this, the camera shifts to the other side and Dylan is standing in a dark room, his face illuminated by a greenish glow. It cuts to behind him, and he's standing in front of the screen that had the percentage bar on it. He looks down at the keyboard and hovers his hands over it, thinking what to do. Really inspecting the screen, he clicks one of the icons. The cursor on the screen gets a loading circle next to it, and a tab pops up. Please enter your password to view sensitive information. Dylan sighs and rubs the side of his head, thinking for a moment. He lowers his hands back on the keyboard and deliberately types out Lotus. He looks at it before clicking enter. Incorrect password. He curses under his breath and takes a deep breath, looking around the room, seeing if there's any clues of what the password is. He checks one wall, nothing. Another wall on the floor, nothing. He sighs before trying another password. Robot. He clicks enter, and to no surprise, incorrect password. As he's about to give, Miranda's voice fills the room. It's Ezekiel. Dylan quickly turns around and raises an eyebrow. What? Miranda goes into the dark room and shows Dylan a yellow slip of paper with the word Ezekiel underlined. Dylan grabs the slip from her and looks at it, turning it to the back and flipping back to the front. Where did you get it? It was in a suitcase in the other room. Dylan flicks his eyes up to Miranda from the slip before turning around and going back to the keyboard, typing in the password, Ezekiel. He clicks enter one last time, and the tab goes to a new one where there's 3 files, one named Lotus, one named Projects, and the last one labeled Terminal 18. Oh, and there's one more thing in the suitcase. Dylan keeps his hands on the keyboard but glances back at Miranda, who's holding a stack of 3 printed pictures. Dylan's face drops as he sees the pictures. One of a baby, 1 or 2 years old, laughing. The second of a kid no older than 6 holding a toy train. And the last picture is a woman smiling. Dylan's mom smiling. It cuts to black before cutting to Alan sitting on a bench, leaning his head back with his eyes closed behind his mask. Behind him, footsteps sound and Jake and Zara walk up to the bench.
Wake up!
Jake and Zara keep walking, and Jake pulls Alan by the fabric of his suit, dragging him off the bench. Alan stumbles to his feet. Oh, what the hell, man? Alan falls into line behind the other two and starts to follow them as the camera pans up to show the robots funneling around the tower still. Zara looks at Jake. We got a plan? Jake keeps his gaze on the robots.
We'll see.
What do we think they're doing? Jake shrugs and Zara talks. Hell, could be opening a vortex, but more likely they're guarding something important. Lotus is dead. Why guard a dead man's treasure? Lotus isn't really dead, just his physical form. Alan squints his eyes at Zara, who looks back and sees her resist, rolling her eyes. It's just how robots work, Alan. Alan stops side-eyeing her and looks back at the bots.
Advanced robotics? You actually remembered something from that class?
Zara laughs. I'm as surprised as you are. Jake shoots Zara a small smile before going back to a neutral face. Jake and Zara stop making Alan stop too. Alright, I think we're close enough. Zara turns around to Alan. Maybe go in the building, see if you can find out what they're guarding. If they are guarding something. Alan nods before zooming off into the building. Jake and Zara face each other. Me and you need to try and pick up... Fudge nuts. Me and you need to try and pick off some of these bots.
Alright, stick close.
Zara pulls out her wand and twirls open a portal. They step into it, and on the other side they walk out on top of the tower, now inside the funnel of bots. Inside, the bots continue their funnel pattern. As Zara and Jake look around them, stunned by the sheer amount of them, Zara decides to make a move. She raises her wand, pointing at the sky, creating some thunder in the sky. She lowers it quickly, striking one of the bots with a bolt of lightning, making it fly out of control and below the building, sparking, going out of sight. But then, single other bot turns to Zara and Jake and arm their weapons. Immediately, Zara swirls open another portal, and they swiftly go through it back onto the ground below. Well, I think we need a new plan. It cuts to inside the building where Alan is speeding in and out of different rooms of the building trying to find something. After going through a few rooms, Alan looks around a certain room for a little longer than the other ones. He goes further into the room and towards a black machine. Alan crouches down and inspects it closer. He grabs onto the side and glances to the back of it, seeing a wire connected into it, with an orange glow flowing through it. His eyes raise slightly and he steps back looking where the wire leads. As he follows it, he passes more cubicles until the wire leads up into the ceiling. He goes into one of the cubicles and phases through the ceiling, popping out of the floor on the next level. He glances around before pulling the rest of his body onto the next floor. Seeing the wire again, he goes to it and it's connected to a lifeless robotic body sitting in a chair. One similar to Lotus's body, but looks older and less advanced. Alan goes up to it and thinks for a second. He looks at the turned-off body, leaning its head back, running his finger along the exposed hinges. He looks away for a second before quickly putting his foot on the robot's knee and forcefully pulling its head off, dropping wires onto the floor. He looks at the front of the head before speeding off for a second and immediately returning without the head in his hands. He goes for the rest of the body, lifting it up from the side and speeding off with it too. He returns to the outside, standing by Jake and Zara.
What did you find?
Alan shrugs. Just some cubicles, office stuff. Yeah, is that why all the robots are panning out? Jake and Alan both snap their heads at the tower, seeing the robots beginning to leave the funnel formation and off into two different paths. What's going on now? Jake steps off to the side and taps into his comms.
Hey, Dylan?
It cuts to Dylan and Miranda back at the dark room in the back of the base. Dylan stares at the picture of his mom and slowly takes it from Miranda's hand. He takes it and keeps looking at it, just blinking at it blankly. You know her? Dylan blinks, starting to get filled with tiny tears. This is me. Dylan pulls up the picture of the baby. This is my brother. Dylan puts the baby picture of himself down and shows Miranda the picture of the kid with the toy train. He puts it down and slowly pulls up the picture of his mom. And that's my mom. Miranda's face only gets more confused and shocked as she learns about all the pictures are of Dylan's family. Why isn't there a picture of your father? Dylan sets a stack of photos on the counter next to the keyboard and looks up at Miranda, his eyes slightly red and teary. My dad was never really around. To focus on work, was always taking trains out of town. Miranda looks down. I didn't know it was that bad. I don't really like talking about it. Oh. Still doesn't explain why the password is your last name and there's pictures of your family. Yeah, maybe the reason's on the computer. Dylan turns around to the computer, wiping his eyes clean. He puts his hand back on the mouse and slides it to the file labeled Lotus. He double-clicks it, and the file opens. Inside are some pictures of blueprints showing the design of Lotus, how he's built, what he's made of, and who he's made by. Dylan's face drops. We gotta go. Dylan quickly turns off the console and walks past Miranda, leaving her stunned. She chases him out. What did you see? Nothing. Let's regroup. Dylan starts heading for the main door of the base, but Miranda runs up to him, rotating him to look at her. What the hell did you see on there? Dylan sighs and looks anywhere but at Miranda. I don't know how, but my dad made Lotus. Oh. Before Miranda gets a chance to speak, Jake over the comms cuts her off.
Hey, Dylan?
Dylan clicks his tongue and rolls his eyes to the top of his eyes before tapping into the comms. What, Jake?
The bots, they're not funneling anymore.
Dylan lowers his eyebrows. What do you mean they're not funneling anymore? What are they doing?
They're panning out, splitting up.
Dylan gestures for Miranda to follow him down the hallway and out of the base before responding to Jake again. Sit tight. We're coming. Dylan taps off his comms and starts to jog down the hallway, holding his hand out for Miranda to grab. It cuts to the outside on an empty city road, with stars twinkling brightly in the sky. A manhole cover on the ground gets pushed open and slid to the side and placed down on the road. Dylan's suited arms comes out from the hole and helps him push himself out. Once he gets to his feet, he helps Miranda out. Once they get out, they look around at the empty road, looking at each other before Miranda holds on to Dylan as he flies away. It cuts to them landing on the roof of the warehouse next to the rest of the team who is watching as two groups of robots slowly make their paths towards something unknown. Dylan lets go of Miranda as she walks to the rest of the group watching the bots. Dylan walks up as well. We need to control their groups. We can't have them split up like this. I could make a portal, get them together again. Dylan makes a grumble sound. Where would you send them, though? Zara thinks for a second before her face lights up. I have a place in mind. It cuts to Dylan separating two medium-sized prongs on one of Zara's portal devices. Dylan taps into his comms. It's set. Mine too. We're ready. It cuts to Zara at the portal device by Alan. Okay. Here goes nothing. Zara points her wand at the device and slowly a new portal forms. Alright, got it. Jake, you're up. It cuts to Jake standing under one of the fleets of bots. Jake pulls his hand up, showing he's holding a flare gun. He hovers his finger on the trigger of the flare gun. He presses down on it harshly, and a red flare shoots out the barrel, hitting the middle of the robots, making some fall, but most immediately look at Jake on the ground.
Come on, bots!
Jake flails his arms as he begins running towards the portal machine that Alan set up. As Jake gets closer to the portal, Zara sparks the device, and the portal begins to grow beyond the bounds of the device, making a big enough portal for all the bots. Jake runs at the size of the huge portal, and the bots all get tricked by the trap and get transported through. On the other side, Dylan looks above at the other half of the bots and uses his gravitational powers to pull them towards his direction. Slowly, the bots go his way as the veins on his neck pop out. Zara swiftly comes out from another portal to the side and makes the portal in the machine bigger, engulfing all the robots, transferring them to the place the other robots went. It cuts to the whole team standing by each other now, smiling and relieved. As everyone is laughing, Alan is standing off to the side, alone. But nobody notices and they just keep talking.
Wait, so where'd you send him again?
It cuts to the barren wasteland of the Death Realm with skeletons flying around. Two gigantic purple portals appear, and both fleets of robots come out and into the Death Realm, the portals closing behind them. It cuts back to Earth.
It was smart, Zara.
They all stand around for a moment longer. Well, I think we need some rest. Everyone nods and walks off screen, leaving Dylan and Alan alone to talk. Dylan walks up to Alan. Alan, you should go. Alan looks up at Dylan as he approaches him. I'm not scared of you. Dylan looks at Alan under a shroud of hate before flying off with his powers. It cuts at the barren forest in front of the rising sun. Small particles of snow drifting around in the air. Faint sounds of birds sounding through the air. Dylan is sitting on the familiar rooftop watching it all play out. He's alone and doesn't have anything with him. But his piece isn't long, as a purple portal appears and Miranda walks through, saying thanks to someone on the other side. She fully comes out and the portal closes behind her. Hey. Miranda walks to the ledge Dylan's sitting on. Me and the others are going down to clear out Lotus's base. You want to join us? I'm alright. Miranda nods and looks away from Dylan to the sunrise. Merry Christmas, dude. Dylan is a little surprised, but maintains his nonchalant, quiet demeanor. Yeah. Can't believe almost all of us forgot. I'm gonna go, handle something. Dylan starts to get up from the ledge as Miranda watches him with sadness in her eyes. She sighs as he levitates off the roof and away, off camera. She looks away and back at the sunrise, starting to finally understand why Dylan comes here all the time. It cuts to Dylan flying over the city as he looks down at some of the buildings. Some bodegas, offices, and a cemetery, the same one Atlas was buried in. He looks away, keeping his eyes shut tight for a second longer as he continues to fly. Finally, the camera stops as Dylan keeps flying, leaving this camera behind as he starts to blur with the pink and orange sky as it cuts to black. But wait, it cuts to someone sitting in a chair, and he's watching something intently. He gets up and slams his hand on the table multiple times before grabbing a circular metallic mechanism off the table and walking through a door frame. It cuts to black, and the credits roll. The end of Season 3.